G'day folks, ZiggyD here, and here's a little bit of a walkthrough on the Woven Faction mechanics for the endgame for Last Epoch's Tombs of the Erased. After your first encounter with the Woven, you'll get an invitation to come and meet Masque here, and gain access to the Weaver tree available here inside of the faction menu. This allows you to start customizing your endgame, and I'm going to run you through how you gain the points for this, how the various pieces of content work, and just what you can expect and how you can make full use of it. The Haven of Silk is here at the end of time, and if you come here you can speak to Masque, and as you rank up your faction by gaining and spending memory amber, which I'll explain how that's done in just a moment, and from here you'll progress the story of this piece of the expansion's content, but also you'll gain access to Masque's vendor where you can buy Woven Echoes, which are the itemized map system, and one of the primary methods for progressing. But first, we'll head into one of the timelines here. And in every single timeline, as you explore, you'll pretty quickly begin to encounter the cemetery maps here. Before that, however, it's quite likely that you'll encounter one of the tombs inside of your regular echoes. So even inside of a normal echo, like this one here, Devoured Armory, you might very well find a kind of a mini tomb inside, which may well be your first encounter with the Woven. These are a good source of the new idols, which are exceptionally powerful. They are substantially more powerful than the normal ones, with much more interesting and impactful modifiers and higher resistance values and a little bit more broader utility as well, since you have things like this modifier on the suffix there being both resistance and also something for minion users. By doing these tombs, you'll also gain access to various new uniques, and you'll also be able to start acquiring some of that memory amber. We'll head into one of these cemeteries here, because these are where the most substantial forms of the progression happen. These begin much as any other echo, and initially appear to be a regular echo, but they don't have the normal echo objectives of going and defeating a certain boss, or cleansing an area, or activating a pillar, or whatever. Instead, they'll have enter the cemetery and defeat the Woven Firstborn, typically. The other thing you'll notice is as you progress through these maps, even in the outdoor exterior area here, there'll be various Woven enemies and these egg sacs around as well. Now, you'll want to destroy these egg sacs as you come across them for a few reasons. They can do several different things, but the main one of interest, at least initially, is the fact that as you kill these, they release these little spirits that then go and enter other enemies, and then when those enemies are destroyed, they will drop memory amber. So that's your primary process for collecting that memory amber, and that's how you progress the Woven Faction rankings, by collecting and using that. And also how you gain access to purchasing more things from the vendor, from Masque, and also gain more ability to re-roll some of the crafting systems. So it's used by quite a few different things, and it seems that it will be potentially a bottleneck in some of your activities. So you'll always want to be on the lookout for the ability to gain some of that memory amber. It also boosts the loot that the enemies drop, and there seems to be several kind of special variants of things that can occur. In this case, this was a particular champion that's been possessed by one as well, so we've got like a very a bit more of a spicier than usual encounter. Eventually, as you kill enemies and explore the map, you'll come across the entrance point here to the actual tomb itself, or the cemetery, in this case. And we can go ahead and head in there. And this is kind of its own dungeon slash map. And your only real objective in here is to go and locate the boss and defeat the boss, but there are quite a few other interesting things in these places, and they can be quite rewarding. They're definitely very stacked with loot, and there's a lot of good opportunities to pick yourself up some new idols. Lots of memory amber as well. And in here is also where you'll get probably the majority of your Woven Echo drops, which can be viewed in the menu here. There's quite a few of the idol drops, and there's a lot of good affixes on there, and you'll definitely want to set up your loot filter to hide the ones that you aren't interested in and highlight the ones that you are. It's a big help because it becomes quite the overload very quickly to look through all those different affixes, but you'll want to have at least a little look at all of them initially to evaluate what ones are going to be actually good for your build. So you'll see that the map is divided up into a lot of kind of these like side chambers. Some of them will be a loot room like this. Some of them will have like a special elite in them. There's a variety of different encounters to discover, it appears. In this case, this one dropped an arena key. I've had the chest drop all sorts of different things, including spawning loot lizards. So it's very fun to explore these and collect yourself a lot of loot. Looks like there's a bunch of cockroaches ambushing out of this chest here. And of course in here are the various egg sacs as well. Sometimes you'll kill those and an elite will appear out of them. And it's worth mentioning that you can juice up these in the Weaver tree. There's quite a few things here in the Weaver tree that will affect how rewarding these are overall, including modifying the chance of champions to drop things, and even just like scaling the pack size, for example, of the tombs and cemeteries. And just to clarify, in case the tombs and cemeteries thing is a little bit confusing, because it definitely confused me a bit at first, it seems that the tombs are the ones that you encounter inside regular echoes randomly, and then the cemeteries are the ones that are actual dedicated maps. And then the third term to kind of be clear on is the woven echoes, which those are the itemized maps that you go ahead and place. And I'll show you how we do that in just a moment. There you can see I smashed one of the eggs and an actual already possessed elite spawned out. One of the passive points on the Weaver tree increases the likelihood of that to happen because it's effectively spawning an extra rare monster for you. So obviously that's not a bad thing to have happen. You can even get the Tomes of Experience, like some of the Echo rewards from these random chests too. So there's quite a good degree of loot randomization going on there. I appreciate that the devs have really done everything they can to make this content as interesting as possible by just filling it with such a variety of different reward types and things. It's a bit of a catch-all, kind of has a bit of everything in it. Not the least of which is all the various new things that come with this faction and expansion. Got a fancy Tomb Guardian here that's possessed by an erased gladiator. There's lots of different interesting enemies. I keep discovering new things. You can see this highlighted one here. Dread Forest is one of the Woven Echoes. So they stand out, so you're not exactly going to miss those, thankfully. Eventually you'll come across a room that contains the boss, and there are several different bosses. I think there's 3 maybe, kind of like the Weavers of Fate, the 3 sisters or something. So this one is the Woven Firstborn, which seems to be the one that I consistently run into in the cemeteries. But the exact distribution of the bosses I'm not entirely sure on yet. Still exploring and testing that, and delaying my progression a lot as I do so. But that's kind of what I do. I like to explore these mechanics. So far these bosses have been pretty manageable, but I feel like my build has been pretty strong. But, you know, there's definitely a lot of things going on in the boss fight, but you'll figure that one out as you go. Perhaps I can make a more dedicated guide to some of the bosses in the future. But the primary thing here is that once we kill these, we seem to, based on my experience, always get a guaranteed unique drop of some type. So there are a pool of these new Weaver's Will items, and Inheritance of the Erased is one of the more common ones, it seems. Quite likely you can check last Epoch tools for the drop rates on these various uniques as per usual. And obviously a big thing here is trying to get a well-rolled one with a high amount of Weaver's Will and then unveiling it to try and get yourself some nice affixes. A pretty cool thing added here is there's these new Weaver's runes that allow you to place one of these Weaver's Will items into your craft and then use one of these new runes to effectively unveil a random amount of the Weaver's Will instantly, which saves you a bunch of time and also saves you from having to equip it and then kill enemies with it equipped in order to see if it's any good. You can kind of get a little peek into the item, reveal a good portion of it to say, okay, this is actually going to be worth fully unveiling. So once you defeat the boss, you'll want to make sure that you continue on. Don't just portal out, which I've done before. Afterwards, there is a chamber. The chamber in the smaller tombs just has this bench here. In fact, a smaller version of this bench. And this bench here is the Woven Enchanter that allows you to enchant one of your class-specific idols. So it has to be one of these ones, like an adorned idol for your class specifically. You can't use the smaller ones, for example, like these little Goni ones, and you can't use these already Weaver ones here. It effectively allows you to convert these class idols into a Weaver idol. In the smaller tombs, you'll get 1 use, and in the larger tombs, you'll get 2 uses, and the first one is always free. So if you haven't placed any Weaver's modifiers on your idols, then that first one is free. But if you want to say you've got a really nice idol and the modifier that you ended up getting on it was kind of bad, then you can go ahead and re-enchant it. The re-enchanting does cost memory amber. So you'll want to consider if the idol is actually something that you plan on keeping long term and whether it's worth that cost, because that amber can be spent elsewhere. But don't be afraid to spend your amber, because ultimately that's how you progress. This one's quite good, so I'm not going to re-roll this one. I'm pretty happy with this one at the moment. But if I were to place a new affix on these via the Woven Enchanter, what it will do is it'll just place a little tiny baby affix on there, but it will also give it several levels of Weaver's Will, a randomized amount of it. I suspect there's some progression as you move up through the tiers for that, but what happens is, just as normal as you kill enemies, or if you use one of those runes on them, it will unveil additional tiers of the pre-placed affix. So in this case, this one had the physical resistance and bleed duration on it. As I killed things, it leveled that up from like 1-1 to 6-6, and it actually at some point randomly added a second modifier, the critical strike chance and multiplier. So potentially you can have multiple modifiers on these. So there's quite a bit of fun variance to how much you can progress these, and re-rolling these and trying to gamble on getting some good ones may be quite fun. And there's not any risk with this in terms of destroying your initial affixes, so I didn't have to worry about losing my aftershock chance, for example. It doesn't touch those pre-existing affixes, it just adds a new one, basically for free. The other very important part of this final room here after the boss is this forge just here, which allows you to place your Woven Echoes. So the way this works is you don't place it on pre-existing ones, you place it on empty slots that are unexplored currently or don't have an echo in them. So you can take any one of these Woven Echoes here and simply place it in one of these circles. However, there are some restrictions. For example, some of them require a minimum corruption threshold. For example, this one here, the Overgrown Graveyard that I picked up, requires at least a corruption 100. So that's going to be something you use once you get to empowered timelines. Can't be used in the regular ones. A couple really important things to note here. These green plus symbols mean that you haven't yet completed one of these. And when you do complete it, you will gain a passive skill point for the Weaver Tree. So that's one of your primary axes of progression there to unlocking those additional skill points. The other thing to notice here is that there are a few little symbols on the top left as well. So this one here denotes that it's a boss fight. And these you literally just go in and fight a boss right away. And then this one, the hammer here, denotes that it's got some sort of like utility effect. So in this case, it allows you to exchange Woven Echoes for other Woven Echoes once you complete it. Now you can place as many of these Woven Echoes in here as you want, and you can pretty much place them wherever you want. And if I were to place one out here, it'll actually just expand the field. So you can make a really far line stretching outwards in order to, you know, travel a far distance from your starting point, which will be particularly relevant when you're potentially trying to grow corruption and things like that. At some point, Oribus is probably going to cut you off at the edge of the map, but that's the way that goes. That may be a good strategy, but there may also be good strategies where you focus on building a cluster, because there are some that are kind of meta echoes that do things to the surrounding area. So this one that I was placing is just the same as a regular beacon. It reveals the area. So if I were to go and complete this one, it'll reveal all the echoes in this empty area over there, the normal echoes. So it's just a way of placing your own beacon, that one, quite simple, just utility. But this one, for example here, the Lostwood Folly, in this one you slay a few different Fate Weavers, and then after you've completed this map, all of the surrounding echoes will have additional packs of the Woven in it. So that's really good for amber farming if you're going to plan on doing several good echoes in an area. So if you spy like everyone's like, oh, I want to do that, and that, then you're potentially going to chuck one of these here. Then as you do your echoes, you'll get yourself a ton of amber. These ones over on this side are fairly common, and you'll notice that they specify, the text kind of gives you some hints as to what they do. So these ones give you, at the end, a pile of loot that is for the rogue class. So there'll be rogue-specific items. And there's, of course, one of those for each class. The Pillar of Skulls I showed in my previous highlight, that's like you fight 9 champions in a row. Quite challenging, but potentially quite rewarding, especially if you've invested into champions on your Weaver Tree. And some of them are a bit less obvious what they do. The Baroness one, for example, when I completed it, it dropped a ton of shards for crafting. That many of them were like plus skill modifiers. But it's not stated anywhere here that that's what that does, but possibly that's what the Baroness does, or maybe she can drop other things, I don't know. So there'll be some discovery to do, some explorations to be had there. Now, I think the note is that doing these fills up your timeline stability as well, just like any other echo. And in fact, these can be a really efficient way to just quickly blast through these as well. Because these boss encounters, for example, are really fast. You can just go in and kill the boss really quickly, assuming you've got like a good single target build, and then just get a bunch of stability really quickly so that you can blast your way through to completing that echo. So some pretty, lots of different strategies there I think to explore. Now a note on these ones here, these gold highlighted class specific ones, you'll notice it just says complete the objective to claim loot fit for a great rogue. So when placed, these ones create just effectively a regular echo. They'll even have their own randomized rewards. So this one rolled with glyphs here. So you'll go in there and complete the random quest as you normally would for an echo, but you'll get the bonus loot, in this case, fit for a rogue, and you'll also encounter a bunch of the woven in here too. So go ahead and place as many of these echoes as you want to place, prioritizing initially as much as possible, completing these ones that you haven't done yet with the green plus symbols, and make sure you're investing those passives as you go, because not only will you get more loot as you're doing that, but you'll also be able to improve your progression as you do it as well. So here's what I suggest in order to make your progression a little bit easier early on. But there are nodes here in the tree that will kind of directly help you there. So some of these ones like are good later on, if you just want, to improve your loot in general, for example, doubling your echo rewards, or just getting random piles of glyphs whenever you complete an echo objective. But these ones at the top side here are a bit more focused on the Woven faction, and these will allow you to actually progress your Weaver tree unlocks a bit faster. So for example, this one here makes it so that tombs are more common. And then this one back here is quite good. Enemies inside tombs and cemeteries have an additional chance to drop your woven echoes. And since the woven echoes are the main way that you get those passive points, the more of those that are dropping, the more quickly you're going to be able to unlock those passive points for your tree. If you mouse over the completion down here at the bottom, you can see how many points you have left to get. So you can see I've got 8 out of 37 from the woven echoes and 3 out of 13 from ranks. And it actually does list out those, but the easiest way is just to look at the plus symbols in that menu there. Some of these ones over here as well, potentially quite useful for this too. So you can have it so that your just random champions have a chance to drop woven echoes as well. And that's just in your regular echoes even. So you can get those even when you're doing regular echoes as you're progressing that don't have any woven stuff in them otherwise. And of course, you can make those champions more common to help with that as well. The cemeteries being the bigger one that tend to drop more of your woven echoes and give you access to be able to place them as well, which is very important. Those are, in my experience so far, fairly common, but if you want to speed that even more, there's this one here, Graveworn Paths, for example. And of course, just behind that is a way to enhance that even further. One thing to keep in mind though, when placing these, just do keep in mind that as you're progressing, you do want to fill up that stability bar and defeat the boss. And if you place 20 woven echoes in one of these, then you're going to feel somewhat obligated to go ahead and complete those, even if you've already done the boss. And that's fine if you're farming that later on, but you probably want to do that in your empowered timelines. When you're actually progressing, you don't want to spend, 10 hours farming the level 66 Black Sun. You want to just complete it and go. So I suggest placing like 5 to 10 max and then completing it based just on those. After you do one of these, you can almost never touch a regular echo in that timeline again. Just complete your woven ones and then finish off the timeline, go kill the boss and move on to the next one, at least initially. So that covers the basics, and hopefully you found that helpful, or if you were on the fence about trying out Last Epoch and wanted to take a look at the new in-game systems, then maybe that has convinced you. This is really fun. Immediately jump into the monolith system now, and things are just so much more interesting. Before it was just blasting through kind of repetitive, samey echoes. Now those echoes have more things in them, and you very quickly gain access to these much more interesting kind of like mini dungeons. And then you're placing these custom kind of unique maps almost, or modified versions of regular echoes, and things just get out of control much more quickly. So it's a big leap forwards for the end game of this system, and it's a ton of fun. But anyway, folks, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.